Let's talk to our next guest. He is a contributor to thefourthperiod.com as well as to Lowell Sun Sports. You can follow him on twitter.com/Shawn Hutcheon. It is, well, I guess probably Shawn Hutcheon. How you doing, Shawn?
I'm doing great, Matt. How are you?
I am well, thanks. Just riveted by this Minnesota-Chicago third period. Wild, doing everything but scoring.
They are. It's been an outstanding game, and we've seen some pretty incredible goaltending this evening between both games. And Minnesota is not going to roll over for Chicago, and they just may pull this one out.
Is it fair to say right now that in the playoffs that Minnesota has had the best home ice advantage, undefeated?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that crowd out there, I mean, it's Minnesota, so they love their hockey, and they do everything they can to be that seventh player on the ice for sure.
All right, let's turn our attention to Boston, Montreal. Obviously, Game 7 coming up later on, and we're about, 19 hours and 25 minutes or so away from that game. Obviously, Game 6 was the best game that Montreal's played. As if you hear Max Pacioretty, it's the best game they've ever played since he's been there. From the Boston perspective, I was just talking about the fact that I think, so-called gooning it up or getting a little physical after the whistle in the last couple of minutes was a brilliant move by Boston because, to me, it puts a little bit of, hey, we better be physical when we go into Boston. We better expect that, as opposed to Montreal staying on that speed game and worrying about, trying to outmaneuver them with a transition and some vitesse, as we say here in this province, speed.
Yes, you're absolutely right. You need to send the message, as they say, the old proverbial saying, you need to send the message for the next game. And that's what the Bruins were doing. I mean, they couldn't exit the ice after getting beaten 4-0, soundly beaten, really. And they just couldn't let Canadians think that, hey, you know what, we can do that again in Game 7. So, yeah, the message was being sent that, well, now you're coming back into our barn, and we're going to play this way, and so expect it.
Now, what do you expect in this Game 7? Do you expect any lineup changes from Boston?
No, I don't expect to see any lineup changes. They've been doing everything. They've been successful with this lineup over the last 3-4 games. So I don't think there'll be any lineup changes. I do expect them to play a more physical game. I mean, the game that I saw last night, regardless of what a lot of people here in this city are saying. Most are saying the team just didn't show up. Well, I saw a team that did show up. I saw the effort was there. Just the execution was lacking at key times. That resulted in 4 goals for Canadiens. But no, I expect tomorrow night's game. I expect you'll see the Bruins skating. I expect you'll see them playing a physical hockey because that's what they're built to do. And I think it's going to be just another classic Montreal-Boston matchup.
Now, I have one of the Boston newspaper apps on my phone. I haven't had a chance, though, to read in the last few hours since the Game 6 victory. What's the mood like in the city amongst the fans? What are the writers saying about the Game 6 performance by the Habs, and how are people feeling?
Well, I think people are optimistic. The Bruins were the President Trophy winners. You hear the players say we've been there before, and Patrice Bergeron likes to say that over and over again, and he's absolutely right. I mean, in the last 3 or 4 years, there really hasn't been a situation that the Bruins haven't had to face. So I think everyone is really riding on his coattails, really. People are saying, you know what, he's right. They've been here before, so they're optimistic. They think that Canadians played a great game. There's no doubt about it in Game 6. Bruins didn't play up to their expectations totally, but they expect that to change for tomorrow night, and they expect the Bruins to win.
We're chatting with Shawn Hutcheon of thefourthperiod.com as we get ready for Habs versus Bruins. Of course, you can hear the game on Wednesday night right here on TSN 690. Stefano.
Shawn, if the Bruins were to lose Game 7 tomorrow and the Habs were to pull off the upset, do you think the GOATs of this series would be David Krejci and Milan Lucic? Because we haven't seen much production from them all series, and you got to think that if they do lose, Boston fans will be pointing the finger at them.
You're absolutely correct. Fans are pointing the fingers at them already. And I think we can add Brad Marchand also. He has just 5 assists in the postseason. So I think those 3 really would be the GOATs, so to speak. I see them putting in the effort. defensively, they've been very good. But of course, you rely on them. Those are the top two lines. Three of the top six forwards. You rely on them for offensive productivity and scoring, and they just haven't done it. The one thing I will say about Krejci is until last night, I saw him playing differently. His skating posture was different. I don't know if he's been playing with an injury, but it kind of makes me think that he might be, or he had been. But last night he did look a lot better, and hopefully tomorrow night he'll be able to produce.
All right, what about Tuukka Rask? We saw the 5-hole goal from Pacioretty. Everyone speculating that he went to go play the puck and try to get back in time, was caught in no man's land. That's why the 5-hole was open so big. How would you assess how he's played in this series from Game 1 through Game 6?
I think he's played well. I think he's gotten stronger with each game. Those things you talk about, the 5-hole goal last night on Pacioretty, the first goal of the game with the turnover, he ventured outside the crease a little bit, tried to poke the puck away, and it didn't work. Just, again, mistakes that you don't normally see from these players, including Rask. I think that overall, though, he's played well. I think he's in each game has almost really been its own separate story in that who's played better, Carey Price or Tuukka Rask. And of course, last night it was Carey Price. But I think Rask has played well, and I expect him to be at his best. I expect both to be at their best tomorrow, actually. Has
the Nathan Beaulieu insertion into the Canadiens lineup had any kind of play out there in Boston, particularly since he did pick up an assist and played fairly well?
Not really, no. The real story here, and I agree, he played very well. The big story was the play of Thomas Vanek and Max Pacioretty. Much like Krejci and Lucic, we really hadn't heard much from them other than Vanek's 2 goals earlier in the season. Earlier in the series. But yeah, I think Boyle played really well. But the big story here in Boston was just how great Pacioretty and Vanek played, and it was probably the best that we had seen Pacioretty play, and it was one of Vanek's top games against the Bruins in his career.
Chatting with Shawn Hutcheon of thefourthperiod.com as we talk about the Habs versus Bruins. If you were a Boston Bruin coach on that staff, what's the biggest thing that worries you about the Canadiens for Game 7?
I would say, if they can play the way they did in Game 6, and if Pacioretty and Vanek do continue to play that way, now we have something to worry about. And if PK Subban plays the way he did in the first 5 games, as opposed to last night, he played well last night, but he wasn't at his best. If those 3, and along with, of course, with Carey Price, if those 4, I'll say, play their best, now we have something to worry about because they can be lethal.
Shawn, David Desharnais said after Game 5 that even though the top line had been struggling against Zdeno Chara, he said Chara was looking more tired. Did you see any of that last night from Chara, especially on the Pacioretty goal? Yes,
I did. He's not known for his speed, let's face it. Chara's a big, strong guy, but he's never been one of the graceful skaters in the NHL. But to see him get beat to the puck the way he was by Pacioretty was really surprising. And I think maybe there is some fatigue. It seems like from what I've seen around the league, maybe with 1 or 2 exceptions, maybe a Jonathan Taves and Patrick Kane, it just seems to me like the players who went to the Olympics, it just seems like it's all catching up to them now. They seem to be showing signs of fatigue.
Yeah, that's a good point. A lot of players, obviously, in the Olympics. What about any sort of miracle shenanigans? Do we see maybe Dennis Seidenberg playing Game 7?
I would be extremely surprised to see that. He did not skate today. It was an optional skate for the Bruins, but he did not skate. And he took some light contact yesterday morning in Montreal at the morning skate, but he hasn't been subject to any of the normal one-on-one battles that the team does in practices, and I don't think he's ready yet to play. Stranger things have happened in the past in the playoffs, as we know, but I would be really surprised if he was on the ice for the game.
Were you surprised, Shawn, to see Game 6, the face-offs in favor of Montreal with obviously players like Krejci and Bergeron so good in the face-off circle?
That was the one thing that really stood out to me was as I was following the game and on the computer was following the face-off report, and just to see that the really Canadians had owned the Bruins all night long at the faceoff dot. That surprised me, and that's something to watch for tomorrow.
Shawn Hutcheon from the fourthperiod.com, Shawn Hutcheon on Twitter, and of course from Lowell Sun Sports as well. Enjoy the game tomorrow night. Thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Well, thank you, gentlemen. I really appreciate it, and may the best team win tomorrow.
All right. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it. There you go. That's Shawn Hutcheon from the fourthperiod.com. It's 11:44 here on TSN 690.